Hello again to everybody. We came back to the program. And now I would like to invite the next panel. It's Global Mining Financing Trends and Issues. We will have fantastic also speakers in this panel as well. And I would like to introduce you to next chair. It's Dr. Milan Parivodic, General Legal Counsel of GRAS. Milan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jagoda. Thank you for the excellent work that you and Simeon and TGR are doing over the years and this year under these unprecedented circumstances. So you have all our praises and thank you so much for this. And I really have a pleasure to introduce a very competent, strong panel today of speakers, and it is Mr. Erik Rasmussen, the Director of Natural Resources of EBRD. We do not still see Erik's picture. Then we have the country director, country manager for Serbia of the World Bank, Mr. Steven Ndegwa. We have Mr. David Livingstone, advisor of the Investor Mining and Tailings Safety Initiative. Then we have Mr. Eugen Toaxen, the CEO of Pacific Geotech Systems from Canada. Then my dear colleague, Mr. Nenad Stankovic, of the founding partner of Stankovic and Partners. And my name is Milan Parivodic. I'm also a practicing lawyer here in Belgrade, specializing in mining. So I was thinking maybe because the World Bank is doing a broad job of improving mining throughout the countries of the world. And I'm fully aware that Stephen, the World Bank has done an assessment of the situation of the regulation in Serbia and other aspects of mining. Would you kindly give us an introduction of how you see the situation in Serbian regulation of mining and what can be improved? Of course, emphasis is always to try to be better.
Thank you, Milan. It's a great pleasure to be with this panel of very distinguished colleagues. And I'm very happy to talk about the bank's engagement in mining, both globally, but also in Serbia. In Serbia, we see great opportunity. And we, as Mani said in the previous panel, already quite a big impact being seen with the jobs created in the opening up of the Jada mines, about 2,000 jobs she mentioned. And also in our own estimation, if the Jada project comes online, we estimate about 1% extra GDP to Serbia for many years to come. So these are projects that have a huge impact on countries. And this is how we approach our global financing model for supporting mining across the world. Just to remind you that we are not just a normal bank. We are very concerned about poverty reduction. We're very concerned about environmental issues. We're very concerned about shared prosperity. And those are key parameters for guiding our support to mining engagements across the world. We estimate, for example, that not only in Serbia you have this impact on GDP, but across the world, one of the estimates we've seen is the production of graphite, lithium, cobalt is likely to rise 500% between now and 2050. And all of this, of course, will need a lot of financing. For us, financing, of course, goes to the sovereign, but our sister institution, the IFC, does engage with private sector actors in financing directly companies and their investments. There are four things that we look at in terms of supporting financing for mining. One is to look at the government demand for projects to give them a bit more fiscal space to put forward investments that will open up opportunities for mining companies to come in. And this could be in terms of putting infrastructure relevant to those environments or PPPs so that they can share with in the benefits. Importantly for us, most of the financing would have to come with some policy reforms. And in Serbia, as Milan, you noted, we've done a study on the governance and regulation context, and we found it generally sound, but there are some improvements that are necessary, including building capacity in the relevant ministry to be able to efficiently process requests from mining partners. So one aspect, of course, is government demand. Second, we are seeing more and more demand from investors who are keen to attract financing that supports environmental and sustainable engagements in mining. And for us, that's an important element. We would need to have to ensure that environmental, social safeguards are in place for us to provide any financing to the government or for the IFC to related private sector. Finally, two other things that are important for us is engagement with civil society organizations, especially around the transparency agenda. So we support directly engagements around EITI and other transparency initiatives, and of course, helping the countries adjust their policy environments, regulatory environment for transparency. And finally, community engagement, where we see not only their voice need to be represented, we've seen in places where communities, when they felt excluded, can become a huge challenge for mining operations and even for safety. And so we want to make sure that that is well responded to. But even more importantly, for communities to feel they are part of the prosperity that mining companies represent. Jobs within the mining sector, but also jobs in the value chain attended to any such mining. Let me close by suggesting just a set of principles and trends that we are seeing. One is we're very keen to ensure government enable mining companies to de-risk their investments, whether it's through policy or through engagement with communities, through attendant support of establishing related infrastructure. We are keen to support green energy and low carbon minerals, and this is what we're doing in Serbia, because we have our own restrictions around coal and fossil fuels. We're very supportive of PPPs, so opportunities for that would be important for us. And for Serbia, that has now launched 2 PPPs, large PPPs, but not in the mining sector. This is a place where there is still appetite and opportunity to support. And finally, we're very keen that economic diversification comes to the regions that are attracting mining. And this is whether it's new mining like the Yada deposits or in the transition areas around coal mining. So we want to approach this in terms of financing a general economic regeneration of those areas, so that the communities are not left behind. Just one closing comment on Serbia. We're very excited about the new changes in the Ministry of Mining and Energy. We're finding in our first conversation with the DPM a real good perspective forward on modernizing mining regulations, modernizing energy regulations, but also energy mix. And so we're very optimistic about Serbia today, and we look forward to putting together an operation that supports the transition in Serbia in the next year, very early in the next year. So we're quite excited and be very happy to talk more about that. Milan, let me stop here and be happy to take questions later on. And thank you very much.
I just wanted to say how impressed I always am with Stephen's speeches, which are always excellent, broad, policy-based speeches, and add fresh air into the Serbian policy-making environment. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Eric, do you hear me?
I do indeed, thank you.
Well, Eric, please give us a little bit of insight from your side. What is now your situation under COVID, and how is financing working? And do you see any opportunities here in Serbia, and under what conditions for financing?
Thank you. Let me just very briefly say that Milan has always asked me to be the one that gives a little bit of a provocative input to the panel. So I will try to do my best. I will show you some slides. Bear with me, there will be a few provocative semantics in there. but they are large enough, the semantics. Should you want more details, contact me and I shall elaborate on it. But let me just start out by those who may not be aware to mention that we are an IFI. We look a little bit like the IFC. We have 65 governments, so we also government-owned. And EBRD has 30 billion in capital, AAA rated, and we operate in about 38 countries, former Soviet Union, North Africa, and half of our staff are in offices in these countries. And that's where the EBRD is a little bit different from many other IFIs, because our business model is to keep people in the countries. That necessitates, of course, a lot more infrastructure to keep coordinated, but it gives us the advantage of being quite close to the customer and the government. We focus mainly on private sector. We can invest up to 40% in public sector by our mandate, but we have typically only about 20% of our total investments in public sector, so 80% in private. In brief, in Serbia, just to say, to date, we have just below 300 projects. We have accumulated, delivered just under 7 billion euros of investments from our own account. 60%, 62-3% of that is in the private sector. Our portfolio today is just below 3 billion. And we have a local office, of course. If you want more information about the local office and all the people ready to help you there, go to ebrd.com/Serbia, and you can find all the information you need. Now, just to get back to mining, we also have a mining strategy, and thank you for the organizer to sharing the first slide here, as you can see. So in a nutshell, our involvement in mining is guided by this strategy, and you can find it on our website. Also, the organizers can share with you a link to this mining strategy as well as I can. And just to say, our response to COVID, as Milan talked about, we have made a little film about that. The organizers have it. They can share with it in a link so you can enjoy it. I find it very entertaining myself, and it will take 4 minutes of your time. So given the short window I have to speak in, I just have to leave those two references, more details on the strategy and the film on our reaction to the COVID pandemic for you to get, if you're interested, from the organizers or from me. So moving on, if I can see the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Just to let everyone know that these countries are where we are active. So the former Soviet Union, part of Middle East and North Africa. And obviously, when you think about the Toaxen geological belt running all the way through most of our Turkish operations into Greece, swinging up Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia, Serbia, and further into Romania, that's where we see a lot of our mining investments. We also see it, of course, in the belt up in Central Asia. If I can see the next slide. So this is a bit superficial, so bear with me. But if we put EBRD's countries in 3 boxes or groups, then we have the green ones mentioned here with a cross on it. The cross shows that there are some important investors operating in the country. And these countries are countries where you have a high endowment, a lot of resources, and they're also pretty important in terms of mining to the contribution of the economy in the country. Then you have the yellow ones in a box for itself, also where mining plays in one or the other way an important role, but these are countries where they either need to really work hard to move to the right side with investors, or they are running out of endowment and really needs to diversify out of the mining sector in order to safeguard their country's economies. Then you have the box of the red dots here. Most of these do have important resources, call Egypt a lot, Romania as well, but there really needs to be more focus on reform in order to get them to move upwards in this trend to get mining to play a bigger and better role in the local economy. Okay, so just a little snapshot on Serbia. Now, there's too much on this slide for you not to get tired, so let me just focus on the right side of it, the mining sector profile. You will immediately see there are like 6 labels here: good governance, competitive, green, inclusive, resilient, integrated. And those are the sort of points we are using when we are considering a mining project. This is critical actually when we look at almost any project, but also very much the case for mining. So we have in each of our countries a profile. In this case here, Serbia, there are comments on each of these 6 qualities. And if you look below that, there is a little graphic on how Serbia compares to other countries of operation. That's what we call COO, and that means the other EBRD countries, and also some further benchmark. Now, the immediate conclusion here, which is very positive for Serbia, is it's actually doing very well. Compared to many of other countries, Serbia has moved its legislation and institution to become far better governed than it was in the past. It's also very competitive. These are 2 very important things. And generally, it is a country now that is really positioned where you want to do business in mining. So I will spare you some of the many details here, but obviously there are many aspects still that can be improved. So if I move a little bit closer, we have some really big flagships in Serbia, so everyone's aware of, but I just want to mention it. They have been talked about yesterday and also earlier today. So you have, of course, the big deposit with Timok and Eugen. You have also Rio Tinto with the famous Jeddah project. You have a number of smaller mines in Moneko and others. So there is a lot going on in Serbia. There's really foreign investments, there are local investments, but still the potential of what can happen is far bigger than what we see. Had this piece of Serbia been located in Canada, you would have seen it like a flypaper of companies busy everywhere with drilling, resource exploration, and so on. So there is still a lot to be released in terms of potential. And that is what we would like to contribute to. If I can go to the next slide. I was asked also to give a little punch here to the panel of being provocative. So here it comes. What can we do a bit better to take Milan, Of course, on environment, we are not doing bad, neither on social and not on governance. We are not in the red sort of traffic light zone, if I can say, but there are things we can do better. And what we hear, and this is sort of put together a bit from a call on NGOs, on labor unions and others, a bit unfiltered, to let them sort of, influence a bit on our slide here. But they do say, take on social. A lot has good has happened, but they still say in many companies, our workers' rights should be better protected. There should be a better way for us to be able to speak up and be heard. If we have a complaint, it needs to be treated better. Communities still fearful of the industry in some regard, worried about the environment. The consultation with that should be better for many companies. Now, the good news, of course, is that when you have Rio Tinto and other big players now as part of the industry in Serbia, that puts an enormous positive force into better community consultations, better environmental planning, better social care, generally a lot of local involvement, and also raising skills and knowledge. And then we would like to see more women as well in the sector. Not just because it's fashionable to say so, but because we are increasingly in Serbia as well, we are running the risk that our workforce is becoming a bit old. So we need to refresh our talent. And why only look for men? The talent pool consists of men and women. So we need to get both into this industry, and we need to change the view that this is a sunset, boring industry, like forestry also suffers a bit from that image. It is not. Mining is incredible. It has everything you otherwise would want when you are young and hopeful for an interesting future. It has actually some of the most interesting careers, even in information technology, integrated into the mining. You heard Dundee's presentation on how they use modern information technology to become a sharp-edge competitive mining company. There are career paths in these companies well beyond traditional geology, which I personally find very interesting. So there is still more to do. And I think the ones who will actually have the big edge is not only about resources, it's also about doing that upgrade on the workforce, skills, knowledge, and building the right attitude. There, I think Serbia has more to do, but it has a very good platform to build on. So back to EBRD on what we do. So without repeating Stephen's very eloquent speech, we, of course, work also, like the other IFIs, very concerned about having high industry standards around investments and also about government intervention. We want to see more transparency. And for this, we both support, EITI, publish what you pay. We work with private companies for enterprise reform to make them better governed. We help them on the capital structure to make them more resilient. We help the countries with infrastructure to become more integrated with neighbors and export markets. We help them with analysis on where they can fit in terms of trade agreements so they don't become held back by unfair discrimination in international trade. So a host of IFI packages, well coordinated, are helping these countries and these companies to make this industry better. And it's obviously one we need a lot. As you've heard, we need to produce alone as much copper in the next 4 decades that has been produced in the entire history since yesterday. So the demand is outstripping anything that we can do by recycling and continuing with existing mines. And the same, of course, is also the case in other very high in-demand periodic elements. More and more of the periodic table is becoming under extreme stress to be delivered, and fairly quickly, in order to deliver what everybody wants, this low-carbon future. So mining has to step up, and it's a real challenge. But it's one that can be met. And Serbia, I think if anyone should be lucky, Serbia is right there where they should be happy. Well, let me just allow myself to go to the neighbor or neighboring country just to show what we also can do, just to open the eyes a bit, because everyone knows EBRD can finance a company that is quite rich and well capitalized, and we can help mobilize more money and provide advice in certain things and so on. But can we also help the small ones, the ones in an earlier stage of mining? And the answer is we do that carefully, well selected, because the risk is truly scary sometimes, but they're also a real bonus. Here's a very recent example from Bosnia, Adriatic Metals. It's very recent. It's the ink is barely dry on the papers we signed. And this is an early stage exploration company looking at a brownfield silver zinc project in Bosnia-Herzegovina. It is listed in Melbourne and in London, the stock exchanges, and we subscribed to below 3% of the equity in the company in order to help fund the final engineering and economic studies to make their project bankable and be sent on the road show to attract the rest of the equity and the loans to start the mining of their so-called Vares deposit. And our subscription triggered in parallel 20 million convertible notes from a leading financier to the company as well. So sometimes what we do is a bit like taking a vitamin pill. It may not be a lot of money, but it raises the standards in the company. It gives a commitment from the company to the market on ESG, on operations in general, and that actually attracts a lot of other potential investors to consider this company a better asset to invest in. So just by way of background, very briefly, this brownfield site, as you can see a picture of here, is in a region that has a very old story on mineral exploration and actually has everything that you would want from an investment destination, but it has not attracted a single foreign investment into the sector for decades. And that, of course, is hard for a country to deal with when you need to modernize and bring up new jobs and modernization. So what we are investing here is a very rare, maybe even exceedingly rare FDI, foreign direct investment, into this sector, into this community. And there are a lot of hopes there, of course, for skills, job opportunities, and benefits from developing the sector. So support locally and federally is wonderful around the project. And that is a good starting company, good start for a company and in its young age, but with a very promising project. And it's important that we also keep an eye on these type of companies. I know they are small, but they are part of the eco chain, the ecosystem of the mining sector. By helping the juniors, by keeping them alive, making them work even in times of crisis like this, there will be exactly the right delivery of resources and opportunities to bigger players and bigger partners when we come out of this crisis and we go through the recovery. And that is why we take a bet on Adriatic Metals, and we are ready to take a bet on other well-managed, well-staffed junior companies operating in the region. And I think I will stop here and just say we, as a little point to Milan, we are not a guarantee that things can't go wrong. But I believe we are a bit of a burglar alarm. When we invest in a company, we often see that this company gains respect and it gains better relationships. So there is a little bit of political comfort around companies where we invest, both on the tactical level with communities, because we are very much involved in that, but also vis-a-vis changing governments and changing people in institutions. And I think that sort of analogy of being a burglar alarm is often where we are felt it is quite useful. We have much to offer. We tailor our offer to whether you are big or you are small, depending on the region you're in as well. But many look to us in this sector because of the legacy of surprises to investors. They look to us for some comfort, but also to be a sparring partner, so they can tell the world, we talk about doing good and we're doing our business with high standards. But we put EBRD in our equity or in our loan book because we want to demonstrate that it's not only talk, because having EBRD involved, it is a commitment. And that means something to the markets, even more often than what the companies are saying themselves. It becomes someone who is a partner, but also amplifies the news to the markets. So I will stop here, Milan, but I hope I have given both a bit of sweet and sour to think about in the context of Serbia mining. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. I heard much more sweet than sour, frankly. And I understand you said a vitamin pill, and that's a good metaphor. It's something of an political insurance policy also, as you said, towards change of government. So that definitely, with just a small equity that doesn't disturb the private interests, but gives an insurance policy, that's a very good deal, actually. And it's good to hear that you are actually also eager on helping the juniors, because in Serbia, most of the companies are in the junior stage, and therefore it's very important that they are properly financed and get the vitamins, particularly now in times of Corona. So I wanted to ask Nenad, what are your insights? What is your experience as a premier Serbian business lawyer active in mining, having worked with a number of companies in various industries, including mining? What are your insights and thoughts about what should be done here in Serbia with the new government? How can we help them as the private sector?
Well, thank you, Milan. Actually, I just wanted to drop in with a few things I prepared for this conference. My clients are mainly exploration companies, and I made almost small investigation among them. What is the issues they're facing? Although I'm aware of it, but this is the feedback. Usually, there is in financing of mining, there is a favorable times and less favorable times. When we have a favorable times, as it was a few years ago, the financing is growing. The startups, exploration companies have the access to financing and even have the sponsors for their work. But when the cycling is going down, the trends are different, and they have an issue how to come to financing and continue to work. Much of them are expecting period between 10 and 15 years from the day one until they start real project and development of mine and exploration works, but exploitation. But in this exploration phase, usually if you don't have a Toaxen, you have an issue now how to get finance and how to survive, because the cash flow is short, the drilling is not well financed, and expectations are slow. And this is, for all of them, this is normal, and this is expected. This is mainly international companies with experience in other fields, and this is not news. What is the news is fact, and they are looking for the change in government. They're expecting much more better positioning of Serbian government and support of the Serbian government. Not for financing, obviously, but a lot of them get issues with obtaining permits, extension of permits. They have a lot of administrative obstacles, which they're waiting too long for certain permits. For example, for extension of exploration rights, they're for some reason waiting for months, and they cannot simply work on this. And all of them are now hoping that the government will start thinking about the exploration companies in Serbia, which could create a big advantage of Serbia on this market, and that they will have the special office or special unit within the ministry or any other body who can speed up the entire procedure, who can make their life easier, because everybody knows that the good times will come again and that the financing will be sponsored. This is for the exploration companies which are now on the beginning, or for those who started some work, not for those who got a big project and successful projects of Toaxen. I think that they don't have any issue about financing. This is in brief. What is also trend in the market? There is a lot of exits, and a lot of them are trying to sell the business or to find the partner in order to continue their work. And this is another issue, but not topic for this conference. I hope, Milan, that I answered your question.
Yes, I said thank you, Nenad. You have rightly flagged a number of issues which the industry is feeling for several years back. And there is optimism, and this optimism regarding the speed and legal security which is expected by the investors. The Minister Mihailovic actually had mentioned the e-government, because she was very successful in introducing e-government with the construction permits, and she wants now to replicate this success. And we're also very fortunate that we have Eugen Toaxen here, of CEO Pacific Geotech Systems, who has a very developed system of e-government, which is already applied in, you said, which two states?
It's applied in many jurisdictions in Canada, including Ontario and British Columbia, which we know are the kind of the main hubs in Canada, but also just finished a project in Colombia recently, and we implemented kind of the end-to-end cadastre and permitting system.
Electronic.
So to help me through the presentation, I prepared some slides. So let me just share before I start. All right. If everybody can see my screen, I'll start. So I'm Eugen Toaxen, CEO of Pacific Geotech. We're not a bank, but still exciting to share some of our experience, and it is directly related to the topics that were discussed before me. So mainly about transparency of the government, e-government services, and so on. So I'm part of Pacific Geotech, which is a leader in delivering online enterprise resource management system. Our platform is specifically designed for resource sector to support mining, oil and gas cadasters and e-permitting requirements. As Milan mentioned, we implemented quite a few e-permitting and mining cadastral systems in many jurisdictions, including some of the major hubs, mining hubs in Canada, like Ontario, British Columbia, and internationally in Colombia, South America. It's important to highlight that providing an e-permitting service or online cadastre is more than just updating a website. Most of the time requires transformation of the internal organization, procedures, sometimes regulations, sometimes legislation. Many times it requires change management, staff training, data transformation, and process transformation and optimization. Also, it's important to highlight kind of the digital transformation maturity levels. What separates digital leaders from the rest is a clear digital strategy combined with the culture and people that drive transformation. Most of the countries are in the developing and early stage of digital transformation maturity. Based on the Deloitte report, only around 50% of the countries in the world are at the maturing level. This generally refers to digital transformation of the country as a whole or country services, but usually mining sector lags way behind even more. So this is why it's important to have a clear digital strategy and implementation for the resource sector. In terms of digital transformation and in the extractive sector, it is not just a government initiative. Actually, when you compare government and industry needs, both have quite a bit of common ground. So if I'll highlight just a few of them. From government point of view, obviously they want a prosperous industry. Industry wants to have an opportunity for success. Both government and industry, they want to have security over rights of the title. Government, they want to have the ability to provide up-to-date electronic information, maps, electronic processes, and industry want to have access to update information to make informed decisions. Obviously, government wants to reduce costs to the industry, and industry reduce costs to the government. And government wants increased operational efficiency and industry ability to obtain permits faster, as was mentioned in the previous presentation. So that's why we would have to work together between government and industry and optimize some of the services and processes, bring some of them online, and have a transformation which is not just a system, but it goes way beyond that. There are a few things that I would like to highlight in terms of benefits and so on of implementing such a system. So in order to secure an investment, the industry needs to make sure that, for example, their mining right is secure, they hold a mining title, the location is accurate. As some of you know, there are some best practices now around the world, and many of the countries, and especially in Canada, they have adopted a grid-based system where clients can acquire a mining title based on the predefined grid. Another aspect is transparency of activities, beneficial ownership, full traceability of government actions and activities. Another big trend right now is that the service is client-centric. So most of the services are self-serving. So they can acquire an exploration permit online. They can acquire a title online. They can submit all the permit requirements online and so on. And it's full traceability and transparency of the entire process. They can know where their permit application is and so on. And also on the back end, the actual review process is fully transparent. Inside government is fully transparent, traceable at any moment, includes stakeholder consultation and so on. Another important aspect in order to facilitate, let's say, improvement of the process of the approval processes, the one important aspect is the quality of the data, and it's also not only tabular data but also spatial data. In order to speed up and automate many of the internal review processes and stakeholder consultation and so on, it is important. An important aspect is improvement of the data and the spatial data and centralization of the spatial data between custodians and so on. So there are many aspects that go into a system in terms to improve efficiency and so on. In terms of digital transformation, obviously it follows kind of the mining rights or exploration rights and permits life cycle. And there are different level of digital transformation, each in kind of the each of the phases. So I'll just describe at a high level a reminder of those stages. So on the left side we have the promotion. Which mainly is information portals, most of the time with geology and cadastral information for clients and investors. This is most of the time is kind of read-only information and mainly focused on information portals. Another level is tenure management in some countries, cadastral manager, mining cadastral management. Mainly managing the issuance of exploration or titles. In some countries there is some initial stakeholder consultation notification, but mainly is the acquisition part and the maintenance of the title. Then another phase obviously is the exploration or production phase with a strong permitting component, where many permits are required. They included, as mentioned before, environmental permits and other permits and so on, with a very strong stakeholder consultation. And usually it's a lengthy process and there are many dependencies between agencies within government and external stakeholders. And another stage is audits and inspections, basically ongoing inspection audits to ensure compliance and so on. So it is important that digital transformation happens at all levels. To be able to achieve those business improvements and process improvements, is important that digital transformation comes at all levels. And that's what our experience is, that our platform provides that ability from promotion, cadastral management, permitting, audits, and inspection. And I'll focus a bit more on e-permitting because I understand in Serbia that's kind of the hot topic of the day, and that's where maybe some of the improvements are happening or are willing to happen. So just a reminder, at the high level, there is application submission, application review, and permit management. For example, some improvements in terms of digital transformation at the application planning and submission process, in order to speed up the process and reduce the errors. It is important to have a full integration with geographic information systems to allow spatial submission and validation, include some of the geoforms. So we've seen in some jurisdictions where the data quality is really good. Most of the application form data is pre-populated based on existing government data, so where that data is already available. The application can be validated. So I have some example where before, let's say, 80% of the application are either rejected or revised because of incomplete information or incorrect information. So if all the data is integrated, that was basically eliminated, and at least the application stage go forward before the review and so on. Now talking on the back end, on the government, on the review side, obviously there are some high level steps that I'll touch on. So the review process and central to that, and that's kind of true everywhere now, and I mean especially in Canada, the stakeholder consultation and engagement is a central piece right now, and that's why it's very important to have a good internal process for engagement and notification and so on. So everybody is up to date, and they know where the application is, what is required, what are the dependencies, and so on, and it's fully traceable in terms of that. And that will improve improve the internal process, helps the transparency, automate business processes, and streamline for improved performance and economic returns.
Eugen, we have to speed up a little bit because we are running a little bit short of time. We need some feedback also from...
Sounds good. I'll just spend 1 minute and I'm
sure,
done.
Please.
Okay. So in terms of business process, the platform comes with a business process management, where allows you to fully digitalize all the internal processes and have a single window of permitting submission portal. And this can be configured to each jurisdiction and regulation. I just want to touch base to have kind of a full end-to-end cadastre and permitting. I mean, there are lots of components that needs to be put in place, from title management, obligations, royalties, work plan, and so on. So those are really really important to be in place to have a kind of an end-to-end implementation. And just the takeaway is that obviously it's not just the IT that makes it happen. Obviously it has to work with regulation, with government, with industry, and so on, but definitely helps to have a good system that would increase investment, show business improvements, transparency, stakeholder engagements, and operational efficiency.
Thank you, Eugen. We do definitely already have most of these elements that you have talked about, and they're in principle working well, but the ambition is to move to e-government. So your experience from Canada, from Ontario and British Columbia, as one of the best jurisdictions in the world, some of the best jurisdictions are really essential to Serbia, and I look forward to your engagement in Serbia. David, please give us your input on the various topics that we have today touched.
Okay, my name's David Livingstone. I'm an advisor to the Investors Mining and Tailing Safety Initiative, which, as you know, is or you probably know, is a group of investors to the tune of $22 trillion of assets under active management, which came together to resolve the issue of tailings management on the international stage. And of course, why we were here, you probably know the background of events. Mount Polly in 2014, tailings failure. Nobody was actually killed in that particular incident. However, we went on to the Mariana or Bento Rodriguez disaster of BHP and Vale in 2015. I think about 30 people were killed there, and huge ecological damage stemming about 215 miles down the riverways all the way through to the South Atlantic Ocean. After which the investor community, acting through the principles for responsible investment, gave due warning that this issue of the lethality and the damage that mismanaged tailings could actually cause to communities, to people, to agriculture, to social infrastructure, that had to end. And there was general progress about revising how tailings were managed on an international scale. And then, of course, the true tragedy of Brumadinho early last year. The reason why these photographs have got a blue tint is I took these pictures about 10 days after the disaster in the governor of Minas Gerais' helicopter. And I've been in the military, in my former career, I've been in war, I've seen lots of disasters, but nothing prepared me for what I saw on that day in Minas. And this was a huge failure, as we know, of a tailings facility that was actually disused. But this is where then the investor community then stood up and then said, enough is enough. We are now going to promote the development of a new tailings standard, a global tailings standard, to be employed through mining operations throughout the world. And indeed, as we started to develop our concepts in how that would work, we very quickly got the interest of the International Council for Mining and Metals, and also the United Nations Environmental Programme as well. So this was a unique tripartite approach to development of a new global standard, which was with the aim of stopping or preventing any future loss of life or significant damage to the environment in the future through mismanagement or lack of management of tailings facilities, no matter where you are in the world. And I'd like to point out here that, of course, the International Council for Mining and Metals only represents the interests of about 25 international mining companies. But what we are hoping is that the development of a new tailings standard will come systemic throughout the mining sector, no matter where you are in the world. But of course, since Brumadinho, we still had more disasters. And this is what we have, disasters, the one on the right, which was another Vale incident fairly close to Brumadinho, where evacuations had to happen because of an assumed lack of stability in one of the tailings facilities. Although not really tailings oriented, we obviously had the big mudslides in Myanmar, in the artisanal mines there earlier this year, which still brings the subject of tailings management into focus. Earlier this year, you may be aware that there was agreement on the global industrial tailings standard between ICMM, UNEP, and the investors, who essentially represent themselves through the principles for responsible investment. But the actual activity was led by the Church of England Pensions Board and the Swedish Public Pensions Fund. It was, I have to say, there was quite a lot of negotiation involved in this, but essentially one of the key, some of the key elements here is the new global standard. It was actually, although agreed in May, it was formally signed off on the 12th of June, because we had to translate the standard into a number of languages, and then formal publication of the whole with supporting papers as well, which is quite important to read some of those, was actually formally published on 5th of August this year. So it strives, as I said, it strives to achieve the ultimate goal of zero harm to people and the environment, and zero tolerance of human fatality. It's a lengthy document, and there are plenty of supporting papers, so I can't go through it, paragraph by paragraph now. That would simply be too much time. But I'd just like to reflect some of the emphasis. It's divided into 6 topics, and the first topic that we put right at the top of the agenda is about affected communities. The unacceptability of 270 people, more than 270 people dead at Brumadinho. That can never happen again. To develop knowledge about the management of tailings, design, construction of monitoring of the tailings facilities, about management of and governance inside mining companies, which includes a senior responsible person to actually take single responsibility for safe tailings management inside companies, emergency response and long-term recovery, and importantly, public disclosure and access to information. And that is one of the key things here, is to start creating a global database, no matter where you are in the world, how big they are, what is the total enclosed volume, et cetera, and lots of details. And I'll come back to that in a second. But this is essentially how we've looked at the Tailing Safety Initiative strategy. And now we've got a tailings, a new tailings standard. It would be very easy just to walk away, as the investors say, job done. But we don't believe it should be like that. And we believe that we've got further responsibility to make sure that there is systemic change in mining practices to do with tailings in the world. And we see this in a number of interlocking, the famous hexagon diagram, which we see here. So starting at the top right is the creation of the new global standard tailings, of the new global standard. But we don't see that as, again, job done there. What we're actually saying is that's where we start. There may be further developments in the future, especially to do with new mining practices. The launch of an independent global database. There is a first variant which includes disclosures of the tailings facilities. We've now got voluntary disclosures from non-listed companies, indeed, contributing into that. The format for that and the scope of it will be changing as we go to a version 2 of the disclosures and what then appears on the independent database. We're looking at a 24/7 tailings alert system through some kind of operations center. And indeed, the previous speaker mentioned, about satellite, the capabilities of satellite to provide continuous monitoring of tailings. And there are some technologies which we've proven in a concept demonstrator program earlier last year, which shows how valuable satellite monitoring, persistent, ubiquitous satellite monitoring to make sure that tailings facilities remain safe. And what is disclosed is actually the reality on the ground. And the thing about satellites is that they're looking at you all the time. So there's no escaping them. We're looking at the role of the insurance sector. Essentially, insurance products have almost disappeared following the Brumadinho disaster. We're trying to work out at the moment, it's fully involving the insurance sector, whether there could be new products based on better risk, because now as people disclose, they'll understand some of the risks to which they're exposed. What we want to do is to be able to set up a better technology exchange, information exchange, and what are about the best practices, and I'll come back to that in a second.
David,
one of the things.
I'm sorry.
Fine.
Up a little bit.
Initiative to remove the most dangerous.
So
that's a very much more long term. But to integrate all of that, what we're now considering is rather like the Cyanide Management Institute, whether a new independent entity like an institute would be the best vehicle to manage all of this and to create essentially the market change in tailings management, no matter where you are in the world, and that will have universal application. And that is it from me, so I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, David, very much. The Cyanide Institute had really contributed to setting global standards for the use of cyanide, which is very divisive between different countries. So an institute for tailings management would be also a very useful global standard to be set. I will just say a few words myself about how I see the state of the industry. We had actually two major discoveries. In 2004, the Jadar lithium discovery, and Čukaru in 2012, the copper gold discovery. This together with the 2015 change of the mining code has made really a fundamental change in the situation of the mining industry, in the sense that the regulation, the mining law, which was introduced in 2015, and I worked on it extensively, has changed the spirit of the law from a state investment law into a private investment law primarily. There is much room for improvement. And these events, on the resource side, the major discoveries and a few other smaller discoveries, together with the improvement of the law of 2015, brought many juniors into Serbia. So we have probably 150 exploration permits issued. And all this together brought Serbia to the position of the fourth country in Europe on the Fraser Institute ranking, after Finland, Sweden, and Ireland. Unfortunately, not much was done after that in terms of improving the regulation and subordinate legislation. I will just mention that before the adoption of the 2015 law, under auspices of GRAS and particularly Freeport and Rio Tinto, I have worked on a mining code together with a Belgian mining lawyer, and we have developed a whole new law, which I want now also to remind the industry of, and also the ministry. That new law was considered in 2015 to be too modern for Serbia, but maybe it's even too modern today. But there are at least 15, 20 ideas which are very practical and which could improve at least on the existing law if we do not go into an overall overhaul of the industry, as was the case, for example, in Kazakhstan or something. If we want to improve the current law, this is a fountain of ideas which are very practical and already prepared for Serbia for aligning the mining permitting process with other processes like environmental improvement, environmental law, spatial planning, and all other complicated permitting procedures which must be aligned and well phased with the mining permitting procedure. The important thing is that under the 2015 mining law, the subordinate legislation was not passed, in spite of the fact that it should have been passed until December 2017. Probably the two most pressing issues are the alignment of the classification, minerals classification regulation with the law, because we have a regular minerals classification regulation which is based on the Russian system from 1979, whereas the law from 2015 actually is based on the Western system, the JORC and the European system and the Canadian system. So we need to pass the new subordinate legislations. Particularly pressing is the classification regulation and also the licensing of professionals, the qualified persons. That is an issue which is very much about which the geologists and miners are talking a lot. I think that we have a minister who is ambitious, who is interested in improving the whole functioning of the government procedures, the permitting procedures, that we should try to synergize with her, help her. I think that the World Bank should be also very active in this process of not only introducing the e-government, and this e-government, as Eugen rightly said, it is actually a legislative process also. You cannot introduce e-government without changing the law. That opportunity should be used to improve the law further on, so that we return back on the Fraser list as high as possible. And the ministry is interested in Serbia faring well on those lists. She's actually the president of the government group for improving the ranking of Serbia on the doing business list of the World Bank. So her enthusiasm, I think, should be supported, and we should work together with the World Bank, GRAS, lawyers, geologists, and miners all together to see a different situation in 2021. When we'll probably have a new government, but an opportunity of 15 months, which we have, having in mind that we exactly know what to do, that we have solutions from Eugen, legislative solutions, very ripe advice from the World Bank. We can wrap it up and finish the whole process, I think, within 10 to 12 months, and have the minister be very successful, and Serbia be very successful, and support the industry and rise it to a new stage. So please, Eugen, because you're the World Bank country manager, give us your closing words. I'm sorry, not you, Eugen, Stephen, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I thought I got a promotion to being CEO. No, Milan, thank you very much. I actually agree with your points that it's a great opportunity for Serbia with a new minister and the freshness that has come to that ministry.
We don't see you, Stephen.
And the agenda, thank you, and the agenda for reforms that she's put forward, which we think is not only desirable, but also possible in the short time that has been given this government. The fact that she does want to do digital transformation is important, but also, as you said, on the legal side, she's put forward a number of proposals to change the law and update it, and we want to support that. We do think she can be successful, and Serbia can be spectacularly successful in the next decade if they do the right things. Thank you, Milan. I'll appreciate the
Thank you very much, Stephen. Probably we should get together, GRAS and the World Bank experts, and see what we can do together. And we hope to see also Eugen soon in Serbia with an idea of his project. David, Nenad, Eugen, Stephen, Eric, I thank you all very much. I think that this was a very substantive panel. And I'm handing over to Jagoda.
So thank you very much for this panel. Very nice presentation, if I can say. And thank you for your time. I would especially like to thank to Eugen, who is now in Canada, in Vancouver, if I remember correctly. And just for you to know, it's now about 4 a.m. So Eugen, get up very early to be with us today.
Now it's time to go back to work.
You know, you're amazing and fresh, very fresh.
Time for burek.
Time for burek, for Serbian, very, very specific cuisine, just for you to know. So thank you to Milan, thank you to all panelists one more time. And now, before we start with the last panel today, I would like to ask another block of our commercials, of our sponsors and to support us. Thank you.